It was the annual Economist YouGov poll, and it showed support for same-sex marriage has plummeted to 54%. We've now got 33% saying they don't think same-sex marriage should be legal and 13% unsure. Compare that to just a few years ago when polls showed that 70% of Americans supported same-sex marriage. What's behind this drop in support? Well, the lefties are blaming Donald Trump, but our good friend Link Lauren has a more astute explanation.
So the short answer for why support for same-sex marriage has gone down is because us normal gays, us common sense gays, are unfortunately becoming guilty by association, okay? We're being lumped in with all the LGBTQIA R2D2 crap, okay? The most fringe and obscene corners of the LGBT agenda, they're the ones that get the most attention online and on television, and unfortunately, those of us who are normal and don't make being gay our entire personality, we are getting lumped in.
Let's bring in Newsweek's Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, what do you think of that theory that support for same-sex marriage and perhaps even attitudes to trans people has changed because of the manner in which that movement, the LGBTQIA plus movement, behaves and the disproportionate influence they have?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that, Rita. If you look at the power that the transgender lobby has in America, it is still really, really, really high. Now, the Trump administration, to their great credit, is trying to crack down on it. But the overwhelming majority of Americans are not down with the transgender agenda. There are any number of polls that bear this up. There's the famous kind of average of the 80%, 20% splits when it comes to the question as to whether biological males should compete in women's sports. So yes, I think there's some truth to the notion that the same-sex marriage issue is some sort of collateral damage from that. However, there probably is slightly more than that going on here as well, Rita. Family life in America is not currently going well. Birth rates just continue to plummet and to plummet. And to be clear, that is primarily not attributable to same-sex marriage. I say that, by the way, as someone who is a religious Jew and opposes same-sex marriage. So I oppose it. I don't think that it is the number one culprit when it comes to plummeting birth rates in America or anything like that. But I think that there are a lot of Americans who are kind of much more generally just looking around at the burnt rubble of family life, which has really taken a tremendous beating over the past 40, 50, 60 years. It's like a one-word downway ratchet there, and they're kind of looking for answers, grasping at straws, if you will. And the fact that this decision came out about 10 years ago at the Supreme Court is something of low-hanging fruit. So I think that there's part of that going on there, but I think what we just heard from Link Lauren is probably the number one factor. I would probably agree with that as well, yes.
Josh, now let's check in with the far-left Guardian, which ran this piece with the headline, "Does Trump truly care about Nigerian Christians? Of course not. He just knows faith sells." And they went on to claim that though the threat of Islamist terrorism is real, it affects Nigerian Muslims as much, if not more, than Christians, and there's no evidence of genocide. Josh, what's your response to that? The evidence of genocide seems to be fairly evident in a number of Christians, women and children included, who are being slaughtered for no other reason than that they're Christian.
Rita, I mean, what an absolutely pathetic headline from The Guardian. Unfortunately, this is just par for the course from The Guardian, which is, if anything, further to the left over in the UK than the New York Times here is in the US. It is a far, far, far left, deeply anti-Western civilizational publication. Look, I saw one statistic a few days ago that really caused me to leap off my page. If I'm remembering the statistic correctly there, and I hope I'm not wrong about this, but if I remember correctly, they estimated that roughly half of the Christians who have been killed over the past, I forgot if it was year, 2 years, 3 years, over half of Christians who've been recently killed because of their faith have been in Nigeria, literally just in this one country. And that is due to Boko Haram. That is due to the fact that the Nigerian government is currently failing the absolute singular dispositive test, what it means to be a sovereign government, which is to have a monopoly on the use of force. They do not have that. Boko Haram, which is a radical Al-Qaeda, ISIS-style jihadist group, controls large swaths of Nigeria. And it is absolutely a genocide based on every conceivable definition of what a genocide is, which is the targeted, deliberate, wanton, cruel slaughter of people of a certain faith simply because they practice a certain faith. Now, you can quibble with Donald Trump and the way he tweets on Truth Social, or the way he does this, or all this utterly useless crap. What you cannot argue with, Rita, is the fact that at his core, he is a Western civilizational figure. He is someone who understands what it means to be part of Western civilization. He understands that Christianity, the biblical inheritance more generally, is what built Western civilization. When he sees Christians being wantonly slaughtered by radical, fanatical Islamists, by the way, this is the same president, Rita, who bombed Iran back in June, the same guy who assassinated Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian arch terrorist, back in 2020, the same guy who took out al-Baghdadi and declared war on ISIS righteously back in his first term. He has no tolerance whatsoever for radical Islam, and he absolutely cares about the plight of Christians. So the Guardian can take this and shove it, frankly, where the sun don't shine, because they have no idea what they're talking about. But as I said, this is par for the course for the Guardian, sadly.
Now, I want to play you some footage of Nigerian Bishop Wilfred Chikpa Anagbi, who was at the European Parliament last week to speak about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. And Josh, he was heckled by pro-abortion activists. They were shouting, abortion is a human right. The man is there to plead for help for his people who are being slaughtered. He urged the European officials to not remain silent about the killings of Christians. He said the blood of Nigeria's martyrs cries out for help. Do not remain silent. But Josh, he's got these pro-abortion activists trying to hijack the event.
So this is what the left does: is they will attach themselves, they will glom onto something about your persona, something about your identity, in order to try to impeach your credentials on a totally unrelated issue. How do I know this? Because it's literally happened to me. Just over a year ago, actually, I was doing a Federal Society law school event at Loyola Chicago, a small Catholic law school in downtown Chicago. I was supposed to debate a professor there on Trump versus the United States, the major Supreme Court case last year about presidential immunity in the context of the Biden-Merrick Garland lawfare. Okay, long story short, there were probably 15 to 25, give or take, students for justice in Palestine, pro-Palestinian Arab, really anti-Semitic protesters who had signs: Josh Hammer supports genocide, Josh Hammer is a fascist, this, that. They're all because I am Jewish and a supporter of the state of Israel. But I wasn't there to talk about it. I was literally there to debate a constitutional issue, a major Supreme Court issue that came back last year dealing with Article 2 executive power. So I sympathize with this RCC bishop in Brussels, because it's literally happened to me, where the left attacks you for something that is core to your personal identity and has nothing whatsoever to do with what you're talking about there. This is who they are, Rita. They are obsessed with your skin color. They are obsessed with your sexuality. They are obsessed with everything other than the merits of your argument, when Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as the content of your character. They don't care an ounce for any of that. They care only about superficial identities there, and that is what happened to Bishop. That's what happened to me, sadly, in Chicago 1 year ago as well.
Now, let's talk about the shocking attack against two National Guard members in DC by an Afghan national. This has really highlighted, Josh, the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan again, one of the most shameful episodes of the Biden administration. And we saw after that the granting of asylum to thousands with barely any vetting. How deep is this problem? Was this just one bad apple who got through, or was the vetting pretty weak?
Oh, no, it is far more than just one bad apple. Read it literally just over this past week, actually. They arrested another Afghan quote-unquote refugee in the state of Texas. This other refugee in Texas was arrested for posting online about making a bomb. Another guy who came over during the same post-2021 Afghanistan withdrawal Operation Allies Welcome, or whatever happy-sounding platitude the Biden administration gave to that operation there. I mean, this has been a ticking time bomb since day one. The fundamental problem, and by the way, on some estimates here, you're talking about upwards of 80,000 Afghans who came in over the course of this program and related programs. That is an astonishing number. I mean, it kind of harks to memory Angela Merkel with the million Syrian refugees back during the Bashar al-Assad era there. I mean, what are these Western countries thinking? I mean, like, literally, what are they thinking? I mean, this is the toxic empathy. This is civilizational suicide via faux compassion. That is frankly what it is there. It's so discomforting and it's so harrowing. Tragically, this happened here in America right on the eve of the Thanksgiving holidays, when the nation was supposed to be united, was supposed to be united around flag and patriotism and national honor and all that. There, we were dealing with this horrific tragedy from the previous administration. There, the Trump administration, to their great credit, Rita, they are working really hard now to try to undo as much of this mess as they possibly can. They are stopping all current asylee refugee applications. They're talking about potentially even going as far as denaturalizing citizenship for those who have acquired citizenship while being loyal to a foreign terrorist organization. So there's a lot of legal avenues that you can pursue here. I have confidence that the Pam Bondi DOJ is currently pursuing all of them, but for now, it is a horrific tragedy and is made doubly horrific by the fact that it was so easily preventable in the first place if only these people had a modicum of good old-fashioned common sense.
And we've seen some really dangerous rhetoric from some Democrats who should know better. Even members of the so-called seditious six, Alyssa Slotkin, was on television just a week or two ago before this attack, saying that she feared these National Guard members would start shooting citizens in the street. Has there been any sort of accountability, any sort of reckoning, or even just an apology, a recognition that this sort of rhetoric is dangerous? And when you've got an issue with left-wing violence, you can't just go making these outrageous comments on television without thinking that some lunatic is going to take it seriously.
Rita, if they have done anything to try to show they have any remorse or any regret for the language they use to describe their political opposition, aka us, I've not seen it. If they've shown any remorse, certainly it has gone right above my head. Let's recall, these are the exact same people. I mean, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, literally a handful of days, less than a week, if memory serves, before my friend Charlie Kirk's assassination, Senator Murphy of Connecticut was talking about how Democrats are going to have to get comfortable getting their hands dirty and doing things they wouldn't normally want to do. These are the same folks who barely batted an eyelash after a bullet came within millimeters of assassinating Donald Trump on international global television in Butler, Pennsylvania. The same folks who have just continued to double and triple and quadruple down when it comes to calling all of us on the side of civilizational sanity. They call us fascists and tyrants and Nazis and Hitlerites there. They have not stopped their rhetoric for a second. I suppose it must be good for their left-wing fundraising. I suppose it makes them feel good. They can morally preen from the cameras in front of the mirror there. They look good for their very far left blue check Twitterati echo chamber, but it's having real horrible effects in the real world. Really, 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 really bad effects. And made this young, brave, courageous 20 years old, a 20-year-old National Guardsman from West Virginia, may her memory be a blessing. And if the Democrats decide to just keep on steering straight ahead and to continue to not change their horrific rhetoric that they used to describe all of us there, Rita, I sadly fear the result will only be more of where that came from. I hope I'm wrong, but that's my prediction.
Now, Josh, before you go, I played a clip from CNN with a clash between anchor Abby Phillip and Katie Miller. The clip's gone viral. Abby claims in the clip to be a moderate, unbiased host, even as she invites the likes of Jennifer Welch on her program without really ever pushing back on the horrendous things that she claims. And far worse than that, she's appeared on Welch's podcast. She's appeared on Joy Reid's podcast. How can she claim that she's somehow holding herself to a higher standard than the people she criticises?
Oh, she can't. She obviously can't. Now, look, I mean, Rita, the funny thing about Abby Phillips's nighttime CNN program is that it's must-watch television for one reason and one reason only, and it's not the reason Abby Phillips would like you to tune into her program. It's must-watch television because I tune in sometimes to see just who will be the conservative of the evening. It's usually Scott Jennings, but whether it's Scott Jennings or someone else who's just going to own Abby Phillips and going to own all these various other left-wing fanatics who invariably get on there and spout their stupid, idiotic periodic talking points, and there's usually one conservative. Again, it's usually Scott Jennings. Sometimes it's been my friend recently, Jason Rantz, a Seattle radio host. It's been some other folks there who are on there, and they're just able to really stick the knife in and twist it. And frankly, it's delectable. The schadenfreude that I get out of watching Abby Phillips just writher and squirm on national television is frankly just utterly through the roof. So it actually is a must-watch television, Rita, but it is sadly not the reason that Abby Phillips or her higher-ups at CNN would like it to be must-watch television.
I tell you, if CNN have any sense, they will be paying Scott Jennings double what they pay anybody else on that station, because he is the reason people watch, and just about every clip you see that goes viral has him in it. And he is just mastered the art of going there, being the token conservative and completely owning everyone else, including the host.
Yeah, Scott's an amazing talent. He's my colleague on the Salem Podcast Network there. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. Also a very good human being, but he has also mastered the art of the television medium. And he's just fantastic. I mean, frankly, if Caroline Leavitt was not going to be the White House press secretary, Rita, my personal pick actually was indeed Scott Jennings. I think that he would actually be incredible in that particular role. Caroline Leavitt's actually really good as well, by the way. So I'm definitely not criticizing Caroline Leavitt, who's done a fantastic job thus far. But if ever Caroline Leavitt wants to go cash out in the private sector, or tend to her family, whatever she wants to do there, if they ever find themselves in need of a replacement for Caroline Leavitt, they could certainly do a heck of a lot worse than Scott Jennings.
He would be brilliant in that role, as would you, Josh Hammer. You would be right up there as well. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.